From the front lines to the home front, these are the stories of courage, resilience, and transformation. This is more than a podcast. It's a journey through the lives of those who served our country, now serving their communities here in the Hampton Roads, Virginia area. We're diving deep into the heart of their stories, their challenges, their triumphs, and their second chapters. Experience their journey from military service to entrepreneurship to giving back. This is the Veteran Series, only on the Discover Virginia podcast.
Today we're here with former Navy SEAL and serial entrepreneur with a passion for serving men and women in the line of duty. Today he continues to pave the way with his company MATBOCK. MATBOCK has been nationally recognized as one of the fastest growing Fortune 5,000 companies, although it's probably closer to 1,000 at this point, and is located here in the coastal city of Virginia Beach. Sean, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Sean, so I'd love to get started with your journey into, becoming the man you are today. What do you think are some of the key moments of your early life that led you to becoming the man that you are today?
So, I grew up here in Virginia, so originally from Richmond, Virginia. I've got an older sister and a younger sister, family. Really, I attribute a lot of my success and who I am today to my mom and watching her grow up, really help us as a mother, as a single mother at that. And, throughout those years of being a single mother, trying to take care of 3 kids, just her determination and perseverance through everything that she ever had to face. And so, I attribute everything back to that, and just seeing that at a very young age, at, early elementary school age, seeing that, we would have Christmas sometimes at 4:00 in the morning so that she could go to the airport and go work Christmas Day. So.
Wow. And I understand you studied and graduated in 2005 at the Virginia Military Institute with civil engineering as your focus, and then proceeded to study at Officer Candidate School. Did you always want to transition right into Officer Candidate School after graduating?
No, so that came, so I did want to serve. So I have a family history of serving in the military and being, so Top Gun was very big in my age as growing up. So I was like, initially wanted to be a pilot, but then at 12, I was out in San Diego, saw some guys running around with boats on their head, and I was like, all right, I want to be a SEAL. I enjoyed swimming, so I'd already kind of set a goal of being in the military, being a SEAL at a very young age, and VMI was kind of an afterthought. Going to OCS was not necessarily my direct path, just things just kind of lined up that way. So after VMI, I graduated, went straight to OCS, and then went straight to BUDS and SEAL training.
Wow. So not and forgive me for the dumb question. That's not really a traditional route. It sounds like most people just sign up for the military, or they go to Military Institute and start their career.
Yeah, correct. So, if you go enlisted, you can just sign up and go straight into BUDS basically, or you got to go through basic school. But if you're an officer, you go through ROTC. So, and if you're at Academy or VMI or someplace like that offers that as a 4-year thing, you graduate from VMI and get commissioned the day before you graduate. So I would have, if I would have done the traditional route, I would have gotten a commission out of VMI, graduated, and then gone to BUDS. I wouldn't have had that 13 weeks of extra training.
Sure. Now, I understand you did end up pursuing to be a Navy SEAL, as you mentioned, from a young age. That was just kind of, the inspiration behind carrying boats on your head and really, being a SEAL and Top Gun and everything. What do you think the characteristics are that they're testing when they're training people to become Navy SEALs?
So the internal joke between everybody that makes it through is that, we spend millions and millions, probably at this point, billions of dollars trying to figure out how to increase our recruiting numbers within the SEAL community and get more SEALs through the pipeline. And so they do all these testing and evaluation and everything like that. And really, I think it comes down to finding someone that is physically fit, that can pass the physical standard test, but then someone that's ADD or ADHD, because when it really started to suck, it was like, oh, look, butterfly. Oh man, I wonder about these. So you never had long enough time to think about the pain and suck that you were going through, and you're just constantly on to the next thing. And so having that ADHD or ADD diagnosis is actually probably what probably 95% of, or maybe even 100% of the SEALs are.
Interesting. And you know, the recruiting definitely is hard to do when you have something called Hell Week, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. And so like with our class, we started with 142 guys, and we graduated in 19. So you know, you're talking, you know, and historically, so since 1962, generally speaking, you have about a 75 to 80% failure rate going through that. So even when they have bigger classes go through, the percentage of failure is still the same.
Wow. And so, yeah, I know you mentioned ADD before. Are there any other similarities that people share when they go through these simulations and then they make it out on the other side?
Yeah, so a lot of the guys and a lot of the traits that you see within the SEAL community is, you know, they're very, they want to solve problems. So they're constantly looking at how to solve a problem, how to do it quickly and efficiently, you know, listening to other people's opinions on how to solve that, and then executing on whatever it is, and then modifying it, and just kind of that rinse and repeat cycle. So, you know, I think within the SEAL community and other special operations communities, you have these you know, guys in there that are problem solvers at the end of the day. They're trying to figure out how to do more with less, every situation that they're in, because, you know, typically, you know, a SEAL platoon is 16 to 20 guys or so. You know, we can outmaneuver and you know, we can beat out way larger units, and we've done it multiple times, because we just come with violence of action, you know, a projection of force that is way above and beyond what your typical, you know, 16-man element would look like. And so, you know, there's been countless times in history where, you know, 16 guys will shoot off, you know, hundreds and hundreds of guys off of a mountaintop, or push back guys, because they just assumed that force was 10 or 15 times bigger than what it actually was. But, you know, when it actually came down to it, it was 8 or 10 guys. Because of that, you know, just violence of action. How do we solve this problem? And basically that will of like, it's me or you, and I'm not going down this way.
Yeah, definitely a force of will. And I've seen that, you know, from, you know, countless books and records of people going through, you know, Hell Week and events that really test their character and their will. I'm curious, what was the hardest part of becoming a Navy SEAL for you?
So the hardest, I know it sounds kind of cliche in this, and or maybe a cop out, but the hardest part of BUDS is BUDS itself. You know, at the end of the day, you know, it's 6 months of just every day sucking. And so it's like you're waking up, you're doing the same thing, or, you know, you're doing evolution after evolution after evolution. And then it's like, I've got to do this for 6 months. And so it's waking up the next day and knowing that you've got to do all that over again. And then the next day and the next day. And you do that again, 6 months like that. And just to know that you still have advanced training to go through, and then once you get to the team, you're going to be a new guy, and so you're basically proving yourself to the team. So, you know, for the first couple of years that you're even in the military, all it is proving yourself that you're there, and you deserve an opportunity to be there. It's not a, you know, 12-week thing or, you know, 10-week thing. It's years of proving yourself that you deserve, and that they accept you as that.
Wow. So you made it through these 6 months of BUDS, and you actually landed back into an opportunity to come to Virginia Beach. Did you have ties to Virginia Beach before you made that? I understand Virginia Military Institute was part of the trajectory, but was Virginia Beach ever in the works prior to that decision?
Outside of just coming here, you know, periodically on vacations, just because it was close to Richmond and things like that, no, didn't have any ties here to, you know, Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads. But, you know, as soon as we got here, you know, just fell in love with the area. I think we talked about this earlier. It's just like, you know, it's a great area. And then, you know, why we started our business and kept the business here is, you know, we see, you know, at the end of the day, you know, a couple hour drive I'm in DC, a couple hour drive I'm down at Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg. You know, with the military concentration here, with, you know, Norfolk and things like that, you can get to any of these locations very easily, very efficiently. There's, you know, 15 flights from, you know, Charlotte back here and back out to Charlotte, you know, and so it's just a really, I think, easy way to get to our customers and all across, you know, the country very, very efficiently. And a lot of I guess the hubs of, where bigger things in the military. You got DC, you got Tampa with SOCOM, you got Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, all these things like that are up and down the East Coast that make it. Not to say the West Coast doesn't have those things, but it's a very concentrated up and down the East Coast where you can get to those things within, a couple hour flight or a 5 hour drive.
Yeah, that's one of the most underrated parts, I believe, of Virginia Beach, Norfolk area. People get stationed and they're like, "What is Norfolk, Virginia?" And I'm like, "It's the best thing that's ever happened to you in a lot of ways. It's a great hub for sure."
Yeah.
So you put in your time, and I understand you made several deployments, and war inherently exposes things to our minds that we probably shouldn't see. Things that are traumatizing and can have a greater effect later on in life. We see and hear about soldiers going through PTSD and processing their experiences. What have you done to sort of insulate yourself or to at least help yourself understand the things you saw when you were on deployment?
Yeah, so talking about them, making sure that, you don't, and kind of like what you said, insulate or isolate yourself, right? I think that's one of the things that guys do, and then they start getting into this just vicious cycle of not being able to come out of that. So, for me, it was talking through people, understanding, I know I came back from a deployment one time and like the whole family wanted to go out to eat, and we went out to eat, and just the shutting of the service door and how it was like opening and hitting and closing and opening and closing, and like it just triggered me. And like I was sitting there and they all saw that I was very just agitated. And they're like, "Do you want to leave?" I was like, "No, like I got to work through this, right? Like leaving doesn't solve the problem. Like,
Sure.
let me just stay here and just work through it." And so you have to just do that. And I think that's one of the things. But also, for me, it was really finding that purpose. Like after I got out, I made the transition out, with MATBOCK and what we're doing here and our gear and technology that we're selling back. I get to go meet with the guys. I get to still, be engaged with operators from a day-to-day basis and helping them solve problems that they're still facing today. That is like, man, I wish I would have had this, when I was active. And so it's finding that, people, your why, your purpose, whatever that comes out to be. But for me, the two things were talking through them and making sure that I just didn't isolate myself out of things. And then also just finding that next purpose of like, yes, I was a SEAL, and yes, I had an amazing time in that 13 years, 10 active and 3 reserves, and would, if I was younger, do it all over again. But like, I also know that wasn't what defines the rest of my, life here on Earth. It's like, that was a period of time. It was 13 years, loved it, but I've got hopefully, 60 more years to go.
Absolutely. Wow. And you seem to have this innate desire to tinker with things from your early childhood of taking apart, toy cars, and your military career of fiddling with cargo straps on a plane to Alaska. What does that process of tinkering look like for you, and how did you use that as the blueprint to build out the foundation of MATBOCK?
Well, and while I love it, my business partner, Zach, is definitely way better at it than I am. He has a very unique talent. And sometimes a crutch because he's just constantly wanting to do stuff, but like he can very, very easily see things and visualize things. For myself, I have to touch it and feel it and kind of have like, but he can put it all together in his head, and it's pretty impressive to watch. Like somebody will tell us something and his gears are already turning. He's already solved it, a few minutes afterwards, and I'm still like processing, different things. But like between he and I and the rest of the team here, it's just that, we love to be able to help solve those problems. And then look at, I look back at just even, while I've never used my civil engineering degree for civil engineering, an engineering degree and engineering, whenever you're doing it, I mean, all you're doing, those 4 years is solving problems, and sometimes very complex problems of, it might take you 4 or 5 hours to get to, one result. And it's just methodically working through that problem and making sure you have all your facts and all your assumptions and all your information to get you to that end result. And it's the same thing that we're doing here at MATBOCK now with these products and technologies that we're going through.
Now I understand you mentioned family in the early role your mother played, and community within our family shape and define who we grow up to become. I'm curious for you, because I know you mentioned in past interviews, what role did your grandmother play in supporting you and ultimately partnering with you on your first prototype?
Yeah, so my grandmother is awesome. Like what I said earlier. Like my mom was a single mother. We lived with my grandmother and my grandfather for a lot of my early childhood years, and so they were always there at the house with us. But my grandmother and my aunt had a business where they were doing custom draperies, and so she knew how to sew. And with our first product, we kept getting told like, "Hey, you got to go build a prototype, got to go build a prototype, got to go build a prototype." And so we asked her to help us. And so in her garage, where she was basically starting to shut down their operation as she was just getting older and my aunt was getting older and they just were kind of done with that. She helped us put together that first prototype for us and build it all out. And she actually came out with the idea to take that cargo net and put the bags that are on it today. As she was moving it around the shop, she was like, "Oh, this is kind of a pain to move this around. What if we did this?" And we're like, "That's a great idea." It's like, so it worked out really well. And today, to still to this day, she'll ask us, like, out of all the other products, she's interested in, but it always comes up. We call her, talk to her. She's like, "Hey, how's the cargo net doing? Like, have you sold any yet?" And it's just like, "No, it's coming. Eventually, we'll sell some."
Yeah, yeah, that's probably a fun conversation to have on why that hasn't
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
Why hasn't that happened?
I think it's a lot of things. The current cargo net system for the 463 Lima pallet, it's been around since World War II. When we show load masters and logisticians and others that deal with this net all the time, they're like, "Dude, this is a brilliant idea. Why don't we have this?" So we've worked all the way through all these kind of end users that like it and different things like that, but we just keep hitting roadblocks of we have to have like Air Mobility Command to certify this. Like you can't just put this onto an airplane and then they'll allow it to fly. It's like going through FAA certifications and all these other kind of, I don't want to say red tape, but certifications and processes that have to go through to make sure that it's a safe product that's going to be able to, because at the last thing you'd want is a cargo plane to be flying a whole bunch of cargo and things like that with our cargo nets, and then they take a hard G and all of a sudden now all the all the equipment that cargo net was holding starts flying across the airplane and potentially bring down the airplane, right? So it's a catastrophic thing that could happen if the cargo net failed. And so we understand that there's just massive certifications and processes to go through. We have never been able to find that right path to make that happen. I feel like we get close in some ways and then we'll take like 3 or 4 steps back and then we'll get closer and then come back. So it's just one of those things. We're just slowly but surely just tinkering, just trying to keep going through those processes and make it happen.
Yeah. Sean, you've worked on a lot of things, and I'm curious for you personally, what was the main driving force behind pitching this prototype to then pursuing a mission to enable soldiers to be lighter and faster? I mean, you've worked on a lot of things. Like, what was it about this project that motivated you a little bit more to pursue it than all the others?
So with the cargo net specifically, it was one of those things that I didn't, kind of MATBOCK at the time was not even a thing yet. It was just this idea of getting this cargo net to, the cargo net was like our first product, really understanding how to manufacture, get a patent, and figure these things out. As we were talking to guys about, this potential company that we were going to start, because even at the time we didn't even have this company started, we were deploying, constantly getting new gear, constantly evaluating new products, and just kind of saw this void in the defense industry where you have 30 companies that were making the same product. So they make a plate carrier, and yes, it was because obviously we were in war, and so it's just like all these companies had to pump out plate carriers to support the war efforts and things like that. But we were like, yeah, but nobody is looking at what the future looks like and innovating new products and new technologies and really coming up with new designs to some of these things. And so we started that kind of conversation, and guys were like, yes, huge need for that. So this was 2010 timeframe, so way, still war was still kind of going on, not really sure when the end was going to come for Afghanistan or even Iraq. And so we started, that was kind of the mission we set out on and said, okay, well, we're not going to come out with a product that other people are already selling and doing. Let's come up with products that are innovative and actually help shape what the future looks like. And so that's really what just started really driving that motivation to do that. And we've released products and then found out that another company already had that similar product or a design of it, and we've actually just pulled it all off and refunded everybody's money and just said, hey, look, like, this is not what we want to be about. Like, we don't want to copycat other people. Like, we want to develop new products and new technologies.
Sean, this is a massive industry you're in. I mean, with multiple repeat products and the potential to overlap and kind of just make something that doesn't work. What has been your biggest failure in the MATBOCK realm, and what did you learn from that experience?
So I look at failure as not starting something. So for us, I don't see not starting something and potentially not learning from a mistake, right? Like in business, you're gonna have ups and downs and stuff. I mean, right now we are going through one of those tougher periods. We had a down year last year for us. It was our first down year in 14 years in business. Sure. But attributed to a lot of different kind of perfect storm situations that have happened. But also on that, we've learned a lot of things. One of the things that just on our production side of things, we've really scaled down and try to make things as common as possible. So like if we're using a particular buckle, we're not using a different buckle for a different bag. Now we've really just try to streamline things. And it sounds simple, but as you start building new products out or doing things, and it's like customers like, oh, well, we really need this buckle or this attachment point. It's like, okay, we need to do that. And then we build it, we get a product out there, but it really kills on the production side of things. And so increasing costs of carrying inventory, other things like that. And so how can we achieve the mission for the customer and still give them the result that they need, but using similar fabrics or similar products here, so we don't have to stock 40 different buckles or all these different types of Velcro or all this stuff like that. So that's something that Jason, our GM, has really been working the last few years, and so us going through that down year last year as not only one that he was working on, but forced us to now really take a hard look at all of those things like that. And so we've put minimums on some products that potentially we weren't selling a lot of anymore, and put a longer lead time on them as well. So say that customer knows, like, hey, look, like, we might only sell 50 of these in a year. Well, it's going to have a longer lead time than something that we sell a couple hundred of a year, right? So looking at things like that. And so I don't see that as a failure, and it would have been a failure if we didn't learn from it, or we didn't, try to modify or try to do. So, it has been a point of a setback, regrouping, understanding where we can grow to now set up where the trajectory goes for MATBOCK in the future.
I like that philosophy. It's just like failing forward in a lot of ways, or innovating. It was a sample test, right? Yeah. And you improve it, make it better.
Yeah, and too, I think some of the other things, like early on we were like, oh yeah, let's we want these huge orders, or we want this, and and I think that's what everybody wants, is these massive orders. But come and looking at it now, it's like we've received these massive orders and seen the difficulty it is to go through some of those sometimes, that just absolutely crushes our production capacity and a lot of things, and stresses our supply logistics and all these things like that. And so those things have forced us to now really look at, hey, we can't rely on one supplier for buckles or one supplier for particular items. How do we have 4 or 5 different suppliers that all have relatively the same price? How do we price out for those and understand what their lead times are, so that when the next big order comes for that particular item, now I've got 5 places to pull from rather than that one that hurt us last time. So learning from those things.
Absolutely. And I can imagine, the landscape of warfare changes so drastically. I mean, soldiers used to fight soldiers, and now they fight planes and ships and now drones. I'm curious, what ways do you and your company stay ahead of the ever-changing landscape that is warfare and the tactical prevention tools that you create?
So it's constant, obviously evolving. It's researching a lot externally, but then just staying connected with the end user and guys on the battlefield. So whether guys are contractors in Ukraine or Israel, or they're still active in a particular unit, it's just getting with them and understanding, right? Like nothing is sensitive or nothing is classified that is shared, but just understanding, like, hey, look, like we should be really looking at these problems and how to solve them, and then also that, and then understanding getting connected with these program offices as well, so that they will also relay, look, like this is a future requirement that's going to be coming down in 2026 or 2028. So how do you start planning for that now? And so so we're having those conversations at both levels. So at the program level as well as at the end user level, and navigating those from there.
Sure. So it's almost like you're trying to really understand the lifestyle of a product and how long it could last, and the variables that affect it, just to kind of make your best guess at what to create next.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you attend trade shows throughout the year featuring your latest products, and from what we discussed before the camera started rolling, you actually go around the world to do this as well, and you service a really authentic white glove approach tailored to that desired user. For example, your latest project with the light tactical vehicle short for just JLTV. Can you walk us through the process of creating a project like this, the manpower behind it, and how you distinguished MATBOCK from its competitors?
Yeah, so like that specifically, it was understanding what the requirement was. Like I said, at that higher level, talking to the program offices as well as talking to guys on the ground, and then our own experience and guys that are on the team that have retired more recent than we have and things. So just getting some of that like relevant, latest and greatest information. But with like the JLTV project, one of the things that we were looking at was, somebody was going to win this contract, and it's way outside of, or was way outside of, our scope at the time. But if you go back years ago when we were starting to even just kind of understand what the requirement was, what Zach and our team really looked at it was this is an opportunity to produce power on the battlefield, not necessarily green or anything like that. It was just how do we produce more power on the battlefield, understanding that over the next few years, now up to today, right, that you've got, even back then they were talking about conceptually energy directed weapons and just the demand power on the battlefield. Everything requires, and even today, just walking around, everything requires power. So sure. Your cell phone requires more power, your computer requires more power. Everything is data and data consuming, and so the warfighter is being asked to do the same thing, and you've got massive power needs on the battlefield. So how can we produce more power, lighter, right? Those all started fitting into our mission, Lighter, Faster Warriors. Absolutely. And so we started working on and looking at new technologies to solve that problem of how do we generate more power on the battlefield, lighter, more efficiently, more, in our mind, and a more effective way to produce that power.
Yeah, it's like for those of you listening, definitely go check out the MATBOCK YouTube channel for the full description. It's an electric Jeep that has a tremendous amount of power. Now, after this project, I'm sure your younger self would be proud of you, and I'm curious, if we look back at the younger Sean, did you ever think you'd be ending up here in Virginia Beach, building a life and business here?
No, honestly, like if I went back and looked at the younger Sean, like my ambition and what my goal was in life was to be a SEAL. I honestly thought I would, do 20 plus years in the teams. Like I figured I'd just retire and probably, just stay in the teams for the rest of my life. I never really thought, being an entrepreneur or a business owner or any of that stuff. that was my goal, was to be a SEAL and do that job. So I think, I think going back and looking at it, I think that, things happen for a reason. Obviously, I'm a Christian. I believe that, and I see that, my purpose in life has changed outside of, being a team guy, being an operator, to being, who I am now.
Sure, sure. We're so very proud to have you in Virginia Beach and to be part of the community with you here and the everything that it provides. I'm curious on a broader scope, how can we in our cities and localities foster a sense of community and faith and inspiration that helps support one another into the future of whatever may come.
I think what's really awesome about Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads area is just the obviously the military community, law enforcement, police officers, firefighters, like this whole community here in Virginia Beach. While it is quote unquote transient, just because a lot of times people come in here, they might only be here for 2 years and then they're out. So you get exposure to a lot of things that you might not see in your typical city, where they don't have some of the turnover with the military and things like that, and other cultures that come in here. But I think one of the, like I said, the unique things about here is just the connection that we have back with the community, the military, and everything across, and allows us to see and have a better understanding of all sides and all facets, right? Like, not to get political on this, but like, with my kids, I have a 15-year-old daughter who's in high school. But, one of the things that I preach to her is like, look, like where you get your information is totally going to be what you start believing, right? And so if you only look at one news outlet or one source or listen to one friend, that's going to affect decisions you make. So, like, I've always done this, and I think it was probably the teams that kind of started pushing this for me, is like, I read and watch BBC. I would, could kind of get a better idea of, world news. I'll pull up articles on Al Jazeera. I'd pull articles from CNN. I'll pull articles from Fox News. I'll do all these things like this, and, and just kind of like read through those to then form my own opinion moving forward. Sure. Because but like, if you read one from one and only watch one, it totally is going to persuade you to think that that's the only thing that is out there. And it's like, well, there's other angles to things. There's other, opinions on stuff, or just how people digest things. It's a very complex and complicated thing. And I think that that's one of the unique things about Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach, is we have that melting pot across here. It's like, you've got a lot of military, you got a lot, law enforcement, but transient. So you've got people that come in from San Diego, they're only here for 2 years. And you got people, and moving all around. And it's like, but also outside of it, like you were talking about the gateway across everything, it's like, you can go over and be overseas for a few years and come back to stuff. So you get some of that exposure to outside of what other people outside of the U.S. think of the U.S. And so it just helps perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think the future will look like in the next 50 years?
I do think that, I mean, obviously we're seeing AI just come out and really transform a lot of industries and a lot of things. We're really interested in looking at it, and we're playing around with a bunch of different things. I think it's a great thing to look at and do. I do think that it's very similar to probably our parents when they were growing up with the computer, where there were so many people just like, the computer's going to replace humans and the computer is going to destroy jobs and do all this stuff like that. But it's like, and you're already hearing that from a lot of people now. It's like, AI is going to replace everybody. It's going to do everything. It's like, no, it's not. They're just like the computer didn't, just like the cell phone didn't, right? Like, it's like, you have to have human interaction. And I saw this one statistic that I thought was really interesting. It was like, it talked about like cancer research, for example, and it said, I don't have the source for this, so I don't know if these numbers are accurate or not, but it seems plausible. And so what it talked about is like a human alone for early detection on cancer was like 95% efficient or 92% efficient. AI was like 95% efficient. But when you combine human and AI, it was like 99.6% efficient in detecting early. So it's like there is a place for both, right? And there's going to be things like that and other things because while yes, the algorithm and things like that are human based and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's still a machine. It's still artificial intelligence. You have to put in some kind of human interaction to everything we do, and that's how you get just more efficient in things. You potentially save more lives with stuff like that. But I see it in all facets of it, and just like how the computer, same thing, right? Like I mean, you wouldn't think of doing anything nowadays without a computer or cell phone, right? Like if someone's like, hey, just send me a letter, you'd be like, what? No, I'll email you.
Email letter,
yeah,
right?
like I'm not waiting 6 days for them to mail you a letter. Like I'll email you and you'll get it in half a second.
Yeah.
But I think AI is the same thing that our parents saw with computers, and I think that there is going to be a period of adoption and obviously, just like the computer, it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. And there's going to be the same thing with AI. There's going to be people that are using it for good, and there's going to be people that are using it for bad. And hopefully the good people continue to win.
Absolutely. Hopefully the good people continue to win. Sean, thank you so much for the conversation today. Thank you to our dedicated listeners for checking us out on another episode of Discover Virginia Beach Podcast, our CEO series, where we're diving in with local CEOs here in the Virginia Beach area. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. To show your support and appreciation, don't forget to hit that like button and follow us along on this journey as we continue to interview guests weekly to check out and see everything that there is to discover in Virginia Beach.